Our first guest this evening is the best person we could possibly ask those questions of. She will be forever known now as the defense attorney who demonstrated that the Department of Justice, special counsel prosecutors, and FBI agents combined to frame and extort General Michael Flynn, and were doing so with the knowledge and the approval of President Obama and Vice President Biden. Joining us now, Sidney Powell, General Flynn's defense attorney. And Sidney Powell, congratulations to you and our gratitude to you for all that you have done for the general and righting terrible wrongs and all that you've done for the country. Good to have you here. How does it feel to at least be at this point? We've learned one thing, to look with a watchful eye at what the deep state and Judge Sullivan will do next. But it appears that you have prevailed, and finally so.
Yes, this is a huge step forward and a big step toward restoring the public's confidence in the rule of law and our judicial system. But it also demonstrates how fragile it is, because this decision is 2-1 when it should have been unanimous. I mean, every case in the country supported the majority decision here, and the dissenting judge ignores major constitutional principles in all the controlling cases.
And she is an Obama appointee, and again we see a judiciary that is divided on partisan grounds, and we have a Chief Justice who is behaving, one can say, erratically, in that he will claim that there are no Obama judges, there are no Trump judges or Bush judges. But my God, in decision after decision, we see precisely that they are. And this Chief Justice seems to have no way in which to lead the judiciary beyond the deeply divided partisanship that frankly corrupts many of their decisions, certainly this court under Emmett Sullivan.
Well, the majority decision here of the D.C. Circuit, written by Judge Rao, is excellent and very well reasoned and documented. And so we are hopeful that Judge Sullivan will follow the mandate of the D.C. Circuit and go ahead and sign the motion to dismiss, the order granting it. And so we can move on from all of this to getting back to more positive endeavors.
Yeah, I personally don't see that as a close destination, Sidney. And I know that you do have to be careful here because you still have much at stake, and I will certainly respect that. The fact of the matter is, as we learn more about what President Obama knew in his administration at the onset of the transition by the incoming Trump administration, it is chilling to read these notes of Peter Strzok, the other evidence, and to look at what it all combines to suggest, which is that President Obama not only knew but approved of this operation against an incoming national security advisor whom he had fired, and a clear effort to attack a man who was about to sit in the same chair as he in the Oval Office.
It is absolutely terrifying, Lou, to think that this would go on in the United States of America. And these notes are simply damning, whether it was a phone conversation or a meeting or how it was conducted. The notes are clear in raising significant issues for Vice President Biden and, of course, Mr. Obama and their role in orchestrating and instructing and making sure this entire operation was carried out. It's just terrific.
And to suggest that, as the president did, no, just not to suggest, he said straight out, be sure the right people are on this case. I'm not sure what that means. Do you have any idea? Because frankly, it sounds rather sinister.
It does. I think really that's the only way to take it is he's saying, make sure that people who are going to carry through into the next administration are on it, people that Mr. Comey and Mr. Obama could trust to make it come out the right way. I mean, there's really no reason for them to be having this conversation in the first place. It simply shouldn't have happened. I mean, we had both Comey and Mr. Obama saying, oh, no, we never interacted about any cases or anything. And then obviously here they did. And Mr. Biden was on TV not too long ago saying he had nothing to do with the Flynn investigation whatsoever. And then kabam, we've got these notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very difficult case for the former vice president to make, that he knew nothing about it. He may remember nothing about it, but he certainly
That's possible.
had every reason to know about it. It is interesting to me, too, that James Comey said point blank, speaking of Kislyak and Flynn, that their phone calls were totally legit, that 2 FBI agents had written in their 302s and made it very clear to senior officials in the FBI that there was nothing derogatory about General Flynn. Yet, despite the statement from the head of the FBI and agents in the field with the FBI, including Strzok, this moved ahead as a criminal investigation, a national security investigation with zero evidence, and in fact, the avowals of the head of the FBI and FBI agents that there was no issue here. What could possibly have overridden that other than presidential power?
Presidential power and Andrew McCabe, and then the special counsel operation, which frankly I have long thought was all part of the insurance policy that General Flynn was the key to. Because if you'll recall, on August 15th is when Strzok and Page texted each other about the insurance policy they discussed in McCabe's office in the event Trump won. Then August 16 is when they open the case on Flynn, and August 17 is when they send Agent Pienka into the presidential briefing to spy on General Flynn, assess his mannerisms, collect information as much as possible for that 2-hour briefing. And he did that, according to the IG report, for the very purpose of having that baseline read to go by if they needed to interview Flynn later, i.e. if Trump became president. So then that's what they did just 2 days after the inauguration. So they planned this whole thing for a long time.
And they were trying, it seems without doubt, trying to overthrow a president of the United States. Sidney Powell, I want to say thank you for your time this evening and sharing part of this historic day, one I know that that has to be very gratifying to you and for which we're all, the rest of us, I assure you, deeply grateful to you. Thanks so much, Sidney Powell.